Welcome to this episode of The Recovering Therapist. In this episode, we're going to talk about some of the ways that we can intervene when we're having some of those cravings and some of the tools that we can use to try to shift our perspective in that moment in time where we're feeling overwhelmed and the emotions are kind of getting to us. So within the recovery community, groups use different types of mantras and slogans to help address situations when maybe somebody's feeling a little overwhelmed. We're struggling a little bit with cravings and some thoughts. In AA, they use the term slogans. You'll see around the room, there are picture frames with slogans in them. In Smart Recovery, they've got slogans that are kind of based off of cognitive behavioral therapy. So things that you can say, mantras that you can say in order to address your cognitions. And we'll go into both of those. In AA, the slogans for me are just coping strategies. It's the way that when you get into recovery, learning how to kind of develop some coping strategies early on becomes really important. Coping strategies are like muscles, and if I don't use them regularly, then they tend to atrophy. I know for me, alcohol really did become a coping strategy. It was first a primary coping strategy, and then eventually it became kind of my only coping strategy. So when I came into the rooms, I really needed to have some way to deal with life as it was happening to me. And at some level, some of the things that I could do in those quick and dirty moments were just to kind of get that slogan or that mantra into my head and kind of repeat it to myself and kind of refocus once that craving hit. The first slogan I want to talk about is one day at a time. This has really become a central, pivotal thought and concept for me throughout all of my recovery. And I try to work with my clients. I think this is really one of those as well that's really important for them to kind of grasp and use as we get into that recovery space. The idea is that really I just need to be focused on today. I just need to take care of my business today. And if I'm taking care of my business today, then that's really what I need to focus on. And when tomorrow comes, I'll take care of my business tomorrow. There's a tendency to think about what's going to happen in the future. And I can twist myself all around an axle if I'm not careful about what I think the future is going to be and predicting what the outcomes are going to be. And the reality is I just don't know. The other thing is the past and worrying about, what happened to me in the past and feeling all that shame that's involved with some of my behaviors in the past. And again, those are mine. I bought and paid for them, but there's nothing I can do to change them. And so it really does become more productive for me just really to kind of get back into today. What do I need to be doing today to take care of my recovery today? There's enough for me to do on a daily basis that if I focus on that, I think that will serve me best. And when tomorrow comes in, then I roll into tomorrow. What am I going to do? And it now becomes today. And so what I've found is if I'm willing to take care of my business each day, that everything else will kind of slowly start to work itself out. The next one is easy does it. And in this slogan, we're just trying to slow down and kind of allow things to happen. There's a tendency to rush in early recovery. I'm feeling like I've missed out on all sorts of stuff because I've been drinking or that I've got to have an answer right now. And being able just to kind of take a step back and allow things to unfold. We tend to want to control things that are outside of our control center, which is really us. The only thing we can control is us, and evaluate what's going on. Take that step back and not try to force outcomes. Again, when I'm trying to force outcomes, I'm trying to control things that are outside of my controlled sphere. The next one is first things first. And basically what we're doing here is we're trying to prioritize. Recovery should always be at the top of our priority list because anything that I put in front of my recovery, I tend to lose. And so I want to make sure that if I prioritize my recovery, there's a chance that I'm going to be able to keep those other things. If I start to prioritize other things like putting my job above my recovery, then all of a sudden recovery's importance starts to slide down. And before you know it, I've started to move these other things up above my recovery, and it's slid down to a point where it really isn't that important to me. And that's obviously a red flag. So first things first, I want to make sure that I keep those priorities that I need to be doing in order to maintain my recovery at the very top. The next is live and let live. And this is really kind of accepting our recovery, allowing others to live their life. Not my job to control or strategize or make people do things that I think is what they should be doing. It's allowing them their ability to kind of live their life. And who's to say that my concepts or my beliefs or what I think somebody should do is more important than what they feel like they should be doing. They've got the right to control their own kind of destiny, and it's not really my place to try to drive that for them. It's easy for me to take other people's inventory, because what that does is it helps me not take a look at mine, right? It's an avoidance of me looking at mine, and I can always point to somebody else and say, look, they're not doing it correctly. And that's just me trying to avoid what I should be doing and looking at my own inventory. And it's also me trying to compare myself with other people. And the problem with me comparing myself with other people is I haven't lived their life and they haven't lived my life. And so it's not really a true comparison. So allowing other people grace as well as myself and letting them have their own experience becomes really important. It's not for me to teach lessons and to tell people how they should live their life. One of the next ones was one of those strategies that I really dug into when I was in early recovery, and that's the KISS principle, which is keep it simple, stupid. Boy, do I like to make things complex. And so it was really important that I just kind of peeled everything down, just down to the brass tacks, just down to the base, the most base things, and just really kept it as simple as I could. It was, let's not drink today. Let's go to a meeting if it was a meeting day. What am I doing for my recovery? And let's not worry about all this other external stuff, which I used to basically distract myself when I was drinking. So I wouldn't have to really think about how many people I was hurting or the other things I was doing in order to support my drinking. So keeping it simple was really important. The next coping strategy is progress, not perfection. And this is where I'm giving myself a little bit of grace and allowing myself just to try to do this as best I can at the time and not reach to perfection. I use perfection in ways that were unhealthy, including prevented me from doing and reaching out and just even doing some of the simple tasks. If I didn't think I could do them perfect, then I just wouldn't do them. Perfection is the enemy of good enough. And so that was one of those things that I learned and tried to incorporate, that, I just try to grow each day. Just, can I get a little bit better? And it's really about progress. It's progressing through. Remember that recovery is a process. And so it's progressing through. I never have a perfect recovery. I really want to continue to try to push myself and just get a little bit better each day. And so that's the progress. And the last one is think, think, think. And this one's similar to the easy does it, right? So I want to be able to take a step back, take a pause, and make sure that I'm just not reacting out of that old brain automatic process place. And I'm engaging my frontal cortex, right, where I do all my problem solving, the executive functioning, thought process stuff, that I'm engaging that as I go through the day. And it's not just that automatic process, that I'm actually taking a step back and contemplating. Remember that recovery is about awareness. It's about taking some time and really thinking about what's going on in my environment. What am I about? How am I operating within my environment? Why do I think the things that I think, and kind of that self-exploration. So think is really good about just giving me that moment to take the step back and scan the environment and say, what's really going on with me and why am I reacting the way I am? I want to talk a little bit about Smart Recovery. Smart Recovery is another community, and their premise basically is they work off of cognitive behavioral therapy concepts. Some of their concepts include an acronym called DISARM, which stands for Destructive Imagery and Self-Talk Awareness and Refusal Method. And I really like this idea. It's giving a name to that voice, that critical voice that's telling us we should drink, identifying it and then confronting it when it does happen, when it does come. Some of the things I've done with my clients is we actually give it a name. So when that voice does come in, they can kind of confront that voice with a name. People have used slick. I had a client that named it Bob, right? So every time that voice would come in and Bob would say, hey, let's go drink, he would be able to confront it and kind of sarcastically say, sure, Bob, let me go drink. Let me tell you what's going to happen after I drink. I just don't think that's a very good idea, Bob. And so it's more of a proactive, instead of that acceptance place, it's kind of going at it and saying, well, no, I'm not going to do that. And that's just that critical voice. That's that alcohol voice that's telling me I should drink, and so I'm not going to allow that to happen. Remember, you're not responsible for your first thought, but you are responsible for your second and your third. And this is one of those strategies that we can use in order to confront that first thought by challenging that voice and saying, no, that's not what my recovery is going to be about. I'm not going to drink today. The next is called DEADS, D-E-A-D-S. Delay, escape, avoid, distract, substitute. In this strategy, the mantra is, I can tolerate this discomfort. It's temporary and it's harmless. We're challenging these thoughts because when they come in, sometimes they just feel like they're going to last forever. And it's really kind of setting that mantra that's challenging that thought that, no, this doesn't last forever. It's temporary. While it may feel overwhelming initially, pushing back and challenging it and just saying, well, no, it's not, it's just temporary. That craving eventually is going to secede, and that's what we want. We just don't want it to, we don't want to overreact in that initial push. The next are the ABCs of rational emotive behavioral therapy, or REBT. The concept behind the ABCs are that thoughts drive feelings, which then drive behaviors. And so if I've got behaviors that I want to target, what I want to try to do is I want to change my thoughts. Because if I'm able to change my thoughts, then I change my feelings, and then I change my behaviors. So again, trying to tease it back and understand what's my thought that's going on. And a lot of times these are those triggers. There's something in my environment that has triggered the thought to drink. Again, if I can identify what that is and challenge that by just even maybe asking myself, what is going on in my environment that is pushing these thoughts, and being able to identify what that is and then challenge that and say, well, no, I'm just driving by the gas station where I used to drink. That doesn't mean I have to stop and buy something. And once I kind of recognize that, that gives me, that almost empowers me, and I understand where that emotion comes from, that urge to drink, and that fear that I've got to drink, and that fear that I don't have to, that I don't want to drink. All that stuff kind of mixed up. And so it's really about just kind of challenging my thoughts. If I'm feeling frustrated, what is that about for me? If I'm angry, what is that about for me? What's going on? What's driving that anger? And a lot of times I'm perceiving that somebody's maybe disrespecting me. Somebody says something that I think is disrespectful. And so my thought is, wow, they don't respect me. And so I get angry. And so then I kind of lash out. And instead of really kind of taking the step back, once I recognize that emotion, a lot of times we have to kind of reverse engineer this. So I have to look at what are my behaviors, because I can see those are kind of the things that are coming out. And I know when a behavior is something that I don't want to be about. And so when that does happen for me, I'm able to kind of take that step back and say, okay, there's the behavior. What kind of emotion would drive that behavior? And so I'm able to kind of backtrack that, and then it becomes, well, that's anger. Anger's driving that behavior. And then the question becomes, okay, what kind of thought would then drive that feeling? And that helps me identify what's going on. Well, I thought they were being disrespectful to me. I'm able to challenge that, and then it's called reframing, and I'm able to reframe that thought and say, well, no, that's not what they were doing. That's just my misperception of it, because I'm feeling sensitive today. And so, being able to do some of that reality check really is helpful. So I hope those were helpful. I think those are some pretty good strategies in early recovery, and even moving forward. If we can start to incorporate some of those mantras, when I start to feel uncomfortable, start feeling like drinking, just implement and kind of tell myself, well, I need to kind of step back and I need to take it easy. Or, I'm out in front of myself into the future thinking about what's going to happen, and kind of, nope, one day at a time, let me pull myself back. I think these can be really helpful. And so I'm going to encourage you to kind of figure out which ones work for you. And again, internet is a wonderful place to, again, the internet can be a wonderful place. Let's not overwhelm ourselves, or maybe go down rabbit holes that we don't necessarily need to. But, looking for some mantras that kind of help us can be helpful. I appreciate y'all being here for this video. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up, right? If you want to become a member of the community, please hit the subscribe button. And I hope you guys have an awesome day. Thanks for joining me.